Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger. And before we get to it, yeah, I know just by the title of the video you might already be foaming at the mouth, but hang on a second. This video is not me saying that Capcom should not make another versus game. In fact, the furthest thing from it. I'll be advocating for it. But what we're saying here is, do we need Marvel anymore? And specifically, do we need Disney anymore? The Marvel vs. Capcom franchise is a long-running series of games with a lot of legacy. That is putting it as the most mild way possible. Lots of legacy. There are so many legendary moments that have spawned from these games, and in specific, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And during the times of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Marvel 3, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, everything was fantastic, right? There are certain things that would not hold by today's standards, especially like, say, the only balanced update Marvel 3 ever got was Ultimate. People would definitely want more than that, but all in all, things were good, basically up until Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Now, Marvel Infinite had problems, right? I'll be the first to say it, but I'm not going to say it was the gameplay, because the gameplay ruled, straight up. I built my channel on Marvel Infinite, even before Dragon Ball FighterZ, so I love that game. I'm not going to badmouth it in that way, but problems nevertheless. One of the biggest issues of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, though, was Capcom now working with modern Disney. The older games, they worked directly with Marvel. Marvel 3, yes, Marvel was owned by Disney at that point, but it wasn't, the whole MCU era Marvel just yet, right? And come Marvel Infinite, then we are definitely in that era. One of the biggest complaints about Marvel Infinite was the roster. And let me tell you, the roster problems were not on the Capcom side. Capcom's part of the deal worked out fantastically. Jedha, good addition, plays fantastically. Monster Hunter and Sigma, oh my god, they're some of the coolest characters in the history of the Versus series. They work out great. But when we look at the Marvel side of the equation, all of a sudden so many classics are cut out. Where's Magneto? Where's Wolverine? Where's Storm? Well, we're not doing those characters in the movies, so therefore, no more mutants. Bye-bye Phoenix, bye-bye Sentinel, oh, Doctor Doom, that's Fantastic Four, we gotta get rid of that. Super Skrull, oh, he's got the powers of Fantastic Four, see you later. Shuma Gorath, super fan favorite, well, we're not putting him in the movies, so he can't be in there. If it's not part of the MCU cash cow, then basically we're not going to get you. And you know what? For some characters, worked out. Ultron, super cool character. He's really fun. He's a great addition to the game. But in dealing with Disney, you lose a lot of the legacy now just because they're not going to have characters that they can't monetize from the movie stuff. And Marvel Infinite's hardly the only game that suffered from this whole thing. Like, if you ever heard of Marvel Heroes, it was a Diablo style of game with Marvel characters. They actively removed the Fantastic Four from the game. Like, they were in the game and then they took them out. If you bought them, you still get to keep them, but otherwise they're removed forever because, hey, we can't make a movie out of them, therefore nobody gets to have it. So herein lies the crux of the video. Do we need Disney anymore? Capcom, sure, make another Versus style game, absolutely. But Disney, modern Disney, is not a joy to work with. They're very draconian. They are not giving people the kind of characters they want. Now I know they're buying more of their franchises back movie-wise, so in the future there might be Fantastic Four, there might be mutants, but the freedom to use characters from Marvel without the Disney overlords bearing down on you, those days are long dead. And why work with a company that will stifle you like that? That is basically what I'm trying to get to here. So with that said, is it time for Capcom to strike it out and either go on their own or find the new partner? And honestly, I say yeah. Some of the classic characters are definitely a big part of the Versus experience, but in the end, it's about the gameplay, and you don't need Disney for that gameplay. So who do you go to if you're going to partner up with someone else? That's the real question. You could say SNK, but then that would be Capcom vs. SNK 3, and if you're a fan of that franchise, the last thing you want it to be is like a Versus game, right? You want it to be more grounded. So let's look at some other big people who could fit the bill. How about a Capcom versus Square Enix? Hell, why not? You get the entire Final Fantasy franchise to work with, and suffice to say, that's a lot of characters, a lot of memorable characters too, and they have lots of crazy moves and all that you can work with, easily fit in the game, and not only the characters specifically, you can do a lot of the monsters and all that kind of stuff. Basically, it's easy enough to understand, I don't really need to sell you on it. And of course, Square Enix is more than just Final Fantasy, right? They own tons of different companies, tons of different franchises. That includes stuff like, say, Tomb Raider and Lara Croft as well. There's a lot of big name companies and a lot of big name franchises you could work up with, but here's what I really want. What I want is Capcom to say, no more, we don't need any partners. It is time for Capcom versus Capcom, or Capcom All Stars, if you will. And think about it, it makes perfect sense. Capcom does not need another company to fill up a roster, far from it. Especially these days, Capcom has enough of a roster from all their various games to fill the bench 10 times over. Resident Evil is as big as it's ever been. Resident Evil 7, 2 Remake, 3 Remake, Resident Evil 8 Village coming out soon. Big as it's ever been. You have tons of new characters to pull from all those things. We can definitely do a lot better than just Chris and Nemesis. Bring Wesker back, bring Jill back, and bring back Marvel 2 Jill, fun, cool Jill, not the lame one that was in Marvel 3. We got the new lady in Resident Evil 8 everyone's losing their minds about, right? Hey, that makes for a good fighting game character, especially because she's like 10 feet tall, so we definitely got a giant in there. But just that one franchise alone, there's so much more to pull from, right? And a lot more obscure we can get than just even some of the bigger names. How about Monster Hunter? Monster Hunter has certainly exploded with Monster Hunter World ever since Marvel Infinite came out, and you know what? Marvel Infinite had a Monster Hunter character as well. The Monster Hunter character in Infinite actually was super cool too. She was a very fun and exciting character to play, very unique, and just a breath of fresh air. So that's just one thing of a franchise you can milk so much from. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I don't know too much about Monster Hunter in the end. I know a lot of the basics, but I never got around to playing the franchise. But still, even I know there's a lot to pull from. Like, how about Meowscular Chef, right? He seems like he could fit just in. And there's a lot of the monsters. I know all about Rajang. And a giant monkey that smashes everybody and can also go Super Saiyan? Yeah, that probably fits as a fighting game character. And so on and so forth. There are so many franchises Capcom has to work with, right? They even started working with it a bit in a game called Tekken. Tekken is a mobile-based card game system battler. I guess it's the best way you could put it. You want to see Yurian versus Ada Wong? Hey, there you go. They pull from tons of franchises. Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, Mega Man, Street Fighter, Darkstalkers, you name it, there's stuff there. Heck, even Oichi from Sengoku Basara is one of the playable characters for one of your decks, right? So they're digging deep. Having a workable roster is the furthest thing from being an issue. In fact, it's one of the best things because you get to dig deeper on some of your more famous franchises. Like for Devil May Cry representation, well, you obviously gotta have Dante, all that kind of stuff, right? So we don't really get to go further past the main characters. But what about Nero? What about Lady? I think they both make fantastic characters. Street Fighter, you always gotta have Ryu, you always gotta have Chun-Li, but if we are all Capcom, you get to dig a little deeper, right? So what about Rashid? Imagine the madness he could be allowed to do in a versus game with the mobility and all sorts of tornadoes. Imagine an Abigail. Turn Abigail into a proper giant, a versus style giant, right? And then he can go crazy with all the monster trucks and all the car stuff he loves. Basically, long story short, Capcom has this locked roster-wise, right? And the gameplay, well, they make the gameplay, so that's not an issue either. So Capcom really no longer needs anybody else. And especially they don't need someone like a Disney who can actively hamper their product. You could say yes, losing a lot of the legacy characters hurts, but we've already started losing a lot of the legacy characters, and I don't think it'll ever get better. We have already learned the painful lesson in Marvel Infinite, so at this point, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do another Versus style game. Just do it all in-house and make Capcom All Stars a reality. The Marvel side of things was definitely a huge factor starting off early in the franchise's lifespan, but realistically, I don't think we need it anymore. And especially not with the price that Capcom has to pay in terms of bowing down to another company. Now we know, due to various leaks, there's nothing in the Versus market being made right now, right? They are working on Street Fighter 6, but there is no Versus game currently being made, but obviously things can change in the future. But with all that said, I'm going to toss it to you now. What do you think about all of this? For you, is it Marvel or die? Or are you okay with this idea of Capcom kind of striking it out on their own? Let me know what you think about all that in the comments below, please. And while we're at it, everyone loves theory crafting, so if you got any like Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, or whatever else characters you think would make a cool Versus style character, hey, post that below. Let's see what everyone can make up, could be interesting. But that all said, that is now the end of this video. So thank you very much for watching, hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Capcom games.